President Trump is doing everybody a great favor by portraying all of the things that we don't want. Or rather, all of the qualities of human nature that will lead to sure misery and scarcity and destruction. But at least he's putting it on public display. It's not hidden behind doors or in secret where it festers. Though unpleasant to look at least it's out where we can take a really good look at it from all angles and decide, is this who we want to be? Is this us? I mean, if this is the truth of human nature, then surely we are doomed as a species.
Evolutionary dead end?
Yes, yeah. But in spite of all appearances to the contrary, I'm very optimistic about the final outcome. That final outcome may be a ways away. It may not happen this year or this century or this millennium, but eventually the more enlightened aspects of human nature will triumph over the lower kind of animalistic aspects. I mean, we are animals. We come from good animal stock. We're survivors. We know how to survive. We know how to exploit our environment. And if all we were animals, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. We need to remember that it wasn't very long ago that the problems of human existence were mostly around shortages of energy, shortages of food, and that this age of abundance that we live in is relatively recent phenomenon. And society changes, but it's actually a pretty slow process. Where we grew up witnessing the transition from animal power to machine power. That was in our lifetimes. And I remember on my grandmother's street in downtown Toronto, the milk was delivered by horse and wagon. And the advantage was the horse knew when to stop. A milkman would make a few deliveries. He'd say, "Giddy up." The horse would walk to the next, up a half a block and stop. And then he'd get out and deliver it. It was very efficient, low polluting except for the horse manure. But the society we live in was shaped by the constant fear of running out of food and kind of overpopulation is a consequence of food abundance. Because in times of real famine and food scarcity, populations tend to shrink. Overpopulation is not new in the sense that people have tended to reproduce quite frequently, regularly, and with no regard to anything else except their personal satisfaction, the needs of the race to survive, and ecological constraints around food, mostly. Now we live in an age of abundance where managing the excess and the waste produced by the expanding human population are major issues. But underneath this all is still the fundamental fear of famine, of doing without. And not just that, but also fear of others, fear of the stranger, fear of those who don't look, taste, smell, and feel like us, the not us sector of the human population. That's still a major factor in world politics and just managing affairs. And it's a big impediment to progress, this fear, these fears. Fear-based thinking just creates more problems down the road.
The action of fear is to create more fear?
Yes, yeah. It's a vicious, a vicious cycle, a negative feedback loop. And there's only one way to break out of it. There's only one antidote. Abundance is not an antidote to fear. If you're still fearful and you live in abundance, it leads to hoarding, it leads to greed, envy, a whole host of kind of these less pleasant human qualities that we're so familiar with. Now, none of this is news. It's old news. No matter what direction you go, you end up in the same place.